Hey everyone, welcome to my shop. In this video, I will be building my dead sexy Roubo workbench. All right, welcome back. Video 3 of 3. Here's where we left off. Got the base together, everything drawboard. Have one step left, and that is getting the leg vise mortised out. I chose to go with bench crafted for all my hardware, and I do not regret that decision at all. It has been awesome. One thing I do regret is not getting the hardware first. Doing all of this off of my ability to read the plans that Benchcraft provides was definitely risky. It would have been very nice to look at those, look at the hardware as I read the plans. That's a retainer pin, goes through, and I just made up this quick jig to remove all the waste there. Double-sided tape for jigs is the best, usually. Spec tape is awesome. Definitely recommend that. So this old drill press of mine definitely did not take the pinholes from the side in straight. It took some beating to get those pins through, but it all ended up all right. Using that same method that I used before with the rabbit bit and offsetting that with different sized bearings just worked really nicely for getting these large diameter holes. All this is pretty critical, especially for the fit. Once you finish up, the smallest amount can really mess with how well that vise works. So I got all the drawbore pins tapered, set in place. Kind of laid out. I'll pull them back out before glue and get some glue in there, but made all of the dados for the stretchers for the shiplap or tongue and groove shelf to set into. Did walnut on the shelf too. We'll get into that here in a second. And just hit everything with a plane to smooth it out, less sanding later. That's starting to look like a bench. So even though these are drawboard, I still clamped them, mostly out of habit. And probably could have spent a little more time on fitment here. A couple of them I took one or two swipes too many, but it all ended up pretty tight. And using yellow glue here to definitely was all right to use. Had room to swell. Two halves, and we got the bottom. Just used some leftover walnut scraps, stripped it out, cut the tongue and groove, laid them in, used little space balls between. It will keep that panel tight but allow it to move. And then just took a little tenon off the end for it to slide into those stretchers. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but this was heavily inspired by the benches that Frick Straza has built, and including the inlay. He definitely set the next level here. And one of the tricks he told me is you always use a metal hammer when you're hammering pegs in, drop bore, pins. You get a little better feel, and it's much less likely to crack those pins. And I did a little bit of flattening here. I came back through about 2 months after using it and kind of let the whole thing settle in before I really went to town. And remember that baseline I was talking about that I messed up on? This is where it really came to haunt me. I had to take that 1/8 inch or whatever off both sides by hand. And it's just not the most ergonomic place to be planing. Additionally, it made it incredibly hard to diagnose the tail vise. We'll get to that here in a second too. Chose round dog holes, used a strip of oak for the dog strip. I think square are probably a little sexier, but I just didn't want to figure out how to use square and round for holdfasts. So this kind of seemed like the path of least resistance. I might try square dogs next time. One thing I will note is that I would have counterbored. So I counterboarded a 1 inch underneath. Holdfasts tend to not work very well in a 4-inch thick top. Even my Lee Nielsen's, those are the Gramercy. I would have counterbored those at something more like 1.5 inches and gone about 1.5 inches deep on the underside. It's still something a year later I haven't done, but I need to. They'll grip, but they just don't grip as well as they could. In that 1 inch, I've tried scooping them out, reaming them out. It just didn't work. This is a little trick I saw building a scratch stock to do string inlay. Did kind of a test piece here. Ended up worked great. A little bit slow. I ended up reverting to an 1/8 inch bit and a edge guide for a router. But for the first couple of legs, I used that, and yeah, it was great. It kind of makes a tapered channel. There is a great video by Garrett Hack on Fine Woodworking on how he builds his scratch stock, sharpens it, and uses it for inlay on his federal furniture. By the end of this, I was just so ready to be off my knees. It wore out those pants, my back, my feet. One comment I hear a lot is that they want to see the bench this was built on, and that would have been handy. Concrete was not forgiving at all. Neither was that little dog in my face. She's good help though. I inscribed something on the bottom. I coated it in chalk ink or chalk milk paint. That's what it's called. I had seen a table that actually my dad had brought one home, and he sent me a picture of it. It had rotted out on the bottom, sitting in a garage, just from the moisture that the concrete holds. So I thought that might be an extra little bit of protection. And then the inscription reads something like built in the first year, moving to Portland, my wife, for a residency program, and the year of COVID, something along those lines for my kids to read. Or you know what? Their kids to read. This thing's gonna last forever. And as you can see, I got pretty wild with the dead man and the chop for the leg vise. That was actually, it ended up being one of the most enjoyable parts of the whole build. I've never seen one like it. And yeah, I am pleased with how that turned out. It definitely set mine apart and just made it a little different from every other one that I've seen. So, the first finish I used on this was walrus oil. They had sent me some to try out, and I think it's a great finish. In the shop, it's a non-drying oil, so in the shop, it ended up being just a little bit tacky for too long. I ended up taking that and just sanding it, and then putting a hard wax oil finish, like Osmo. I think I used 3054, 3043 on the entire bench, and then I shellacked the lower shelf just to make that super slick and easy to dust. I found that this non-drying oil, while it looked really nice, it attracted all the dust, and then I just come into the shop with a dusty, sticky top on top of my bench, so that wasn't going to do. I was almost done waiting for hardware to show up, and kind of started adding in all the details. I broke my trusty old mallet, getting those end caps on, so I made a new one, and a little hanger for the end of the bench. It's always fun to do. Sort of matchy-matchy. And hardware finally showed up. The leg vise went in just beautifully with the cast iron crisscross. Everything fit without a problem. And you can see that tallow box next to the leg vise. Holds paraffin, helps planes glide through. Everybody seems to like that a lot. And I added some shelves in between the legs to hold random paraphernalia of the wood variety. It's Oregon though, could be for anything. And there you go, leg vise. So got the tail vise in. Remember that 1/8 inch on the baseline for that front board? Well, came back to haunt again. Got to flip this thing one last time, pull it all apart. It's so critical that screw is perfectly straight in that mortise. So I had to take that off the back side, remount it, reflip it, and put that like dog carriage back together, and got full range of motion. Got it coated with the crubber, and made some jaws to clamp stuff to the face. It all worked out awesome. And there you go, in operation. Houndstooth's looking sexy, contrast looking sexy. That mallet hanging there. And there you have it. That is the entire build for my Dead Sexy Roubo. Thanks for watching. Really hope you enjoyed this one. I certainly enjoyed making it, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll catch you on the next one.